Hi, all. As you know, I've been really bothered about all the stuff that's going on with Gaza, and we also know how Trump is saying he wants to make a Riviera, which was a joke even before while he was running. So I started to really try to dig in, just always has felt wrong to justify the killings of a bunch of people based on the Old Testament when we are now in the New Testament. Um, we're not by the law and under the law. And so if you're going to go by the law, you live by the law. You get judged by the law. I think that's how it goes. But anyway, what I want to say is where are the boundaries of the quote unquote promised land? So I just want to tell you that many Bible believing Christians assume that the modern region known as Israel and Palestine reflects the actual boundaries of the biblical promised land. Now, just to remind you, I lived there for 11 years and I was an archaeologist and I studied the Levant in history, got a degree in that. So, but is this true? What were the boundaries of the promised land? The issue is controversial because of the different descriptions we find in the Bible of these boundaries. Number one, the Bible does not give just one description of the boundaries. It's not that simple. But let me try to simplify things by dividing these different boundary descriptions into roughly two maps. So I found some maps here, and I'm going to pull it up. Map number one, the land of Canaan. And number two, the wider territory from river to river. That includes most of the ancient Near East. Okay? The different periods, the land had different shapes. The allotted land in the days of Joshua, for example, is different from the land during the reign of King David and Solomon. In both cases, the boundaries went beyond modern day Israel and Palestine. The promise to Abraham in Genesis 15, okay, verses 18 through 21, is the most striking. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying to your offspring, I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kedomites, and the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Rephaim, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, the Gishahites, and the Jebusites. I would like to pause and suggest that our Christian Zionist friends that they insist on using the Bible to justify Jewish sovereignty over modern day Palestine and Israel. Then they should also call for Israel to invade Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. That is, if they wish to be consistent, or just stop using the Bible. In all seriousness, what did the boundaries reflect? According to the Jewish scholar, his name is Wazana, using water boundaries in ancient Near East had significant indications. The promise reflected in spatial merisms, right, is not to be understood literally, nor should it be translated and transformed into border lines on maps. It is a promise of, listen to this, world dominion. The spiatical mesorisms in promise terminology reflect a land that has no borders at all, only ever expanding frontiers. They are referring to a universal rule. Simply put, there's a Palestinian theologian. His name is Yohanna Kachanchu. He said that it seems that the land of Abraham is not going to have fixed borders. It will continue to expand, thus increasing in size both territorially and demographically. The land of Abraham will continue to extend until it's equal to the entire earth. Moreover, in many messianic prophecies, we see that we can describe it as the messianic land. For example, in Psalm 2:8 declares that God will give the king, God will give the king the nations and his inheritance and the ends of the earth as his possession. Um, Also, it's in Psalm 72, 8, and chapter 11. Micah 5:4 says that the ruler of Bethlehem shall be great to the ends of the earth. And Zechariah 9:10 speaks of the coming king, that his rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. And finally, in Isaiah 54:2-4, it speaks clearly about the expansion of Jerusalem in the whole area. In short, the theology of the land has a universal dimension. We cannot speak simply about the theology of the land, but we should speak instead about the theology of the earth. The land, according to his biblical belief, is indeed the whole earth, as Eretz. Okay? Um, the theology of the land is ultimately the theology of the earth, and thus, in turn, we will take us back to creation in Psalm 24:1. We should not then be surprised that when we read in Romans 4:13 that Abraham was promised that he will inherit the world, quote unquote, not merely the land. Nor should we be surprised when Jesus declared before his ascension that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to him. We seem as Christians to forget who is the King of Kings and the Lords of Lords and who reigns over the entire earth. Okay. God is not merely concerned with a small piece of land in the ancient Near East. He is the God of all people and all the lands. Canaan was only the first stage, not the goal. Does that make sense? Okay, now I'm going to give you some scriptures and you can go look them up. You ready? Genesis 12:5, 17:8, 15, 18 through 21, Exodus 23 through 31, Numbers 34, 1 through 12, Deuteronomy 1, 7, 11:24, Josh 1, 3 through 4, Judges 21, 1 Samuel 3:20, 2 Samuel 3:10, 17:11, 24:2, and chapter 15. We have 1 Kings 4, 25 and 10:23 to 24. And so I want you to consider that, think about that, and see, look those things up, right? And so, and then I want to bring it up, whose land is it? When it comes to the question of the Bible and the land, well, so whose land is it? In a simple yet immensely significant question, we can get this wrong, and you get the rest of the story wrong. And the good news is that you don't need to have a PhD to get it right. So the land belongs to God. Does that make sense? And I'm going to repeat this. The Bible is clear that the whole earth was created by God and belongs to Him. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. Psalms 24:1. See also Deuteronomy 14:10. What the Bible teaches about creation is foundational for our discussions on theology of the land. God created this earth and appointed Adam as his representative on it. And Adam was assigned as God's, kind of caretaker. As humans, we are stewards of God. And He holds us accountable for our actions in regards to His creation. All right? The earth, God's earth. It's a humanity mandate. In Genesis 1:28 it says, "And God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." The concept of creation mandate is the same one reflected in Israel's theology of the land. When God gave biblical Israel the land in accordance to the promises to their forefathers, he made it clear that the land will remain his land regardless. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me. Leviticus 25:23. The land is mine, says God. The land belongs to God, and it is his land, and it remains his land. So the verse that comes in context of the Jubilee laws in the book of Leviticus, it's important that these laws, that they're a reminder to biblical Israel that she does not own the land, for the land belongs to God. Biblical Israel is not free to do with the land whatever she wants or to claim eternal possession of it. You're going to go by the law, you live by the law, guys. These laws are a reminder that the land is not from Israel, but it is a gift to Israel, and that the land is not fully given over to Israel's self-indulgence. Like all tenants, therefore, Israelites were accountable to their divine landlord for proper treatment of what is and was his property. So such a way of administering the land in the Bible was a challenge to the concept of the quote-unquote empire, where the king owned and administered the land and the people were mere servants or slaves. In 1 Samuel 8:10-17, here we are reminded that God is the ultimate king. This is also a reminder to us right now, today, that we possess nothing. We think we do, but in fact, everything we own or possess ultimately belongs to God if we are his. We are God's stewards on the earth. Once we understand this crucial foundational point, then and only then can we move forward with the study of the land of the Bible. And the land belongs to God. Does that make any sense? Okay. Let's see if I could think of something else that I need to talk about. What about the covenant? Let's see. So, aren't they promised the land of eternally and unconditional? That's the question, right? This is an assumption shared by many believers, but usually without considering the full consequence of such a statement. Does that make sense? Eternal and unconditional. If it's true, that it means no matter what biblical Israel did, okay, now you know that Israel, if we look at Jeremiah, got kicked out and moved on to Babylon because of their ways and their idolatries, right? But no matter what biblical Israel did, she and her ancestors will always be the legitimate owners of the land. Now we have a serious problem, right? For it makes God unconcerned with our faithfulness and our responsibility to our neighbor and or to the land itself. There is no accountability. So we must ask, is this thinking biblical to begin with? I would like to suggest, consider this, that the answer is no. This line of thinking ignores the wider framework of the theology that the land in the Old Testament, namely the covenant, right? It's insufficient to say that the Lord gave the land to Israel without taking into consideration the context of the gift, which was the covenant relationship and its reciprocal commitments. The land was an integral part not only of the Lord's faithfulness to Israel, but also of Israel's, obligation to the Lord. Okay? So, did God give the land to Israel without any conditions? Or were their promises really unconditional? We need to think about the calling of Abraham, that in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. The most accurate translation of the verse, 2, okay, could read, be a blessing so that I can bless those who bless you. In other words, there is an element of conditionality. In the first call to Abraham, in the translation of the Hebrew text of Genesis 12:2b, it is indeed a strong one, and it is supported by the larger Abrahamic narrative, the covenant of Genesis 15:17 through 18. It is preceded by a reference to Abraham's faith in 15:6. And he, Abraham, believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. In this narrative, Genesis 17 starts with a call for Abraham to walk before God and be perfect, verses 17:1, and ends with a commandment of circumcision, chapter 17, verses 9 through 10. And it makes justice a condition to the fulfillment of the promise in Genesis 18 and 19, and Genesis 22 makes the point that it is because Abraham obeyed that he will receive the blessing, including the land. So then we go on forward to this Israel's time before they enter the land, and we clearly see the status of Israel in the land was conditional. So, he says in Leviticus 18:24 through 28. I hope you guys are bearing with me. Look these scriptures up, please. Really study this. This is very serious. You're talking a lot of people are dying. They're going to kick them out of their homes and try to boot them off somewhere else, all right? This isn't right, all right? I want you to really listen and please consider with open ears what I'm saying and not take the total mantra without understanding in context. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of pastors out there we all respect, but this is for me where I draw the line on this subject, okay? So here, Leviticus 18:24 through 28 says, "Do not make yourself unclean by any of these things, for by all these the nations I am driving out before you, you have become unclean, and the land becomes unclean, so that I promised its iniquity, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you shall keep my statutes and my rules, and do none of these abominations, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you." And then, think about it. For the people of the land, those are the people that sojourn among them, were the people of the land that were before him, right? Did all these abominations so that the land became unclean. Okay? And then back. "Lest the land vomit you out and make it unclean, as it vomited out the nation that was before you." Okay? And these verses are strong and they're very clear. The land does not tolerate ungodliness. Holiness is a requirement to dwelling in the land. In fact, the text equates Israel with the nations that dwelt in the land before her. Israel is no better than those nations. She will not only hold any special status in the land, if anything, she is held to higher standards since she was given the law. There is no free gift, quote unquote, here with no strings attached. Okay? Scholars observe, okay, 3 areas that Israel had to observe if she were to stay in the covenant with God. The first is idolatry, worshiping other gods that will cause Israel to forfeit its right to stay in the land. The second is the Sabbath and the Jubilee laws. Okay. The third is justice. And guess which of these sins is tied most directly with being expelled from the land? Indeed, it is the sin of socio-economic injustice. Let's look at some references. Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Deuteronomy 16:20. Jeremiah makes a similar point. For if you truly amend your ways and your deeds, if you truly execute justice one with another, if you do not oppress the sojourner, the people that live there before you, the fatherless or the widow, or shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not go after other gods to do your harm, then I will let you dwell in this place, in the land that I gave you of old to your fathers forever, ever. Jeremiah 7:5-7. The social justice laws are important for our understanding of the theology that we're getting fed within the church, okay? The theology of the land, quote unquote. The land was supposed to be a place of equality and justice, and where the powerless are protected. The same applied to the post exile Israel. For example, in Ezekiel 33:24-26, gives a strong warning against relying on ethnicity, okay, or the past to possess the land again. Son of man, the inhabitants of these waste places in the land of Israel kept saying, Abraham was the only one man, yet he got possession of the land, but we are many. The land is surely given us to possess. Therefore say to them, Thus says the Lord God, you eat flesh with the blood, and lift up your eyes to your idols, and shed blood. Shall you then possess the land? You rely on the sword, you commit abominations, and each of you defiles his neighbor's wife. Shall you possess the land? Ezekiel 33:24-26. It's amazing to me how relevant these verses are for us today, because we see many who rely on the sword and on being children of Abraham in the flesh. So shall you possess the land? I just want you to please think about these things.